In a world where it feels like everyone is posting, well, everything, have you ever stopped to think about the people who post nothing at all? Today, we're going to dig into the fascinating psychology behind why some people stay offline. And trust me, the reasons are probably not what you'd expect. I mean, you know who I'm talking about, right? In that endless sea of selfies and vacation photos, they're the quiet ones, the digital ghosts. So, what is really going on in their minds? Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, we've got to talk about the assumptions. Because honestly, what we think we know about people who stay quiet online is almost always completely wrong. Our brains tend to jump to conclusions, right? We label them as shy, maybe a little antisocial, or even insecure. But the actual psychology, it points to the total opposite. We're talking about confidence, real self-awareness, and a deep sense of emotional security. And this is the absolute key right here. Their silence online isn't a void. It's not an absence. It's a very deliberate, different kind of presence, one that isn't for an audience, but for themselves. So, if they're so confident, where does that come from? Well, a huge part of it starts with a deep, deep appreciation for their own personal privacy. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it privacy orientation. It just means someone who puts a really high value on controlling their own personal story. See, they're not hiding. They are consciously deciding what to share because they value their own mental space. It is a proactive choice, not a reaction based on fear. And this really gets to the core of it all. So many of those posts looking for that external validation. The likes, the comments, the shares. But this group, they find validation from within. They just don't need to broadcast their life to feel good about it. And that right there is a huge sign of inner security. That inner security is directly tied to our next point. It's about having such a strong sense of self that you don't feel the need to perform for an audience. There's this great psychological concept called self-concept clarity. And basically all it means is that when you have a really firm grasp on who you are, your values, your goals, you just don't need that constant feedback from the outside world to feel whole. Your identity is already anchored internally. Think about it this way. Their happiness isn't this fragile thing that totally depends on how people react online. It's not built on the shifting sands of public opinion. It's self-generated. It comes from within. And this is what experts call secure self-esteem. It's a quiet kind of confidence. It doesn't need a spotlight to survive. People who have this are often way less anxious and much more focused on their goals in the real world. So, not needing validation is a huge piece of the puzzle, but there's another major factor here. It's a conscious choice to pick peace over performance. A lot of people who are quiet online are just very aware of what we can call the digital illusion. The way social media can twist reality, showing only the most polished, perfect, and, let's be honest, often misleading versions of our lives. And that whole illusion feeds directly into a really well-known psychological trap, social comparison theory. It's that natural instinct we have to look at someone else's highlight reel and then measure our own messy real life against it. And this creates a pretty toxic cycle, doesn't it? You see the curated reel, you compare your own life, and bam, you feel inadequate. People who post less often recognize this pattern for what it is, and they make a conscious choice to just step away from it. They choose peace. Okay, so when we put all of these pieces together, what does the real picture actually look like? What have we learned? Well, instead of that shy or insecure person we might have imagined, the person who doesn't post is often the complete opposite. They are grounded in their reality, they're emotionally intelligent, incredibly self-aware, and they're operating from a place of deep internal confidence. I think it all boils down to this one really powerful idea. They don't need to be seen to feel seen. Real validation for them comes from the people who actually matter in their real lives and, most importantly, from themselves. They don't need an algorithm to tell them they exist. So, that kind of leaves us with a final question to mull over. In a world that is constantly screaming at us to perform, what does real, quiet, unshakable confidence truly look like to you?